Well, it looks like Multiversus might have done it for a third time and messed up again. As we all know, Multiversus is the latest and greatest platform fighter to drop, and it originally released back in 2022 in the open beta phase, where it was very popular, millions of players all around the world, and eventually it was forced to shut down because that player base died out, and they did not have the resources to continue the game effectively. It's kind of crazy how it happened because at the launch the game was so massive, and it was very clear from the start that they didn't have the resources, or they couldn't have anticipated such a large player base from the start. And eventually just got to the point where the servers were so bad and release dates kept getting pushed back for new characters and for patches, so the team decided it would be best to just shut the game entirely down and relaunch at another time. And it's honestly kind of crazy how sudden that drop was, because for the first few months the game was really thriving and going crazy, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they just dropped to like a few hundred players on Steam. Fast forward to 2024 and the game has officially relaunched, and a lot of the players are back, and it does have a lot of players right now, but there are still massive flaws with the game. The numbers have obviously slowed down since the game relaunched back in May. Character announcements still feel like they're a little bit slow to come out right now, and there's still tons of complaints when it comes to the monetization of the game, the way to unlock different characters, and just the overall feel of the game. It just feels way slower. It feels like a lot of features are missing that were in the original beta. And a lot of people have said this, but it almost feels like the game is in beta right now as opposed to when it originally launched in the actual open beta, where it felt a little bit better, honestly. Now that being said, I obviously still enjoy the game. I love playing it just like everybody else does, but there are things about the game that I really wish would change, like the rifts. I hate grinding the rifts. I know a lot of people feel this way. It's not just me. I absolutely cannot stand it. But that's besides the point, because today we have a new story that came out involving Multiversus a little bit here, and it's about a new platform fighter that was supposed to release from Riot. Now, Riot is obviously the company that runs League of Legends, one of the most popular games of all time, and over the last few years they've been branching out into other genres outside of the MOBA space, like Valorant for example. And they also have a fighting game coming out next summer, formerly known as Project L, and now it's called 2KXO, I believe. It's like a doubles version of a fighting game. It looks pretty sick, and I'm very excited to try it out. But today we have an announcement of a new platform fighter game, a game that was supposed to be similar to Melee gameplay, you know, Melee, a game that has been impossible to replicate, it feels like. Yeah, it was supposed to happen, and it just kind of got shut down. So I kind of want to go over this article here that dropped about Riot Games canceling Pool Party, the Smash Bros style fighting game, because it does actually involve multiverses, and we're going to talk a little bit about platform fighters in general and how it's kind of in a weird space right now. I feel like I'm always talking about platform fighters, but like we just keep getting more information about stuff, so it's just an interesting to look at. So let's take a look here. We have Riot Games canceling Pool Party, the Smash Bros style game. And from the top it says that there was a team of 70 to 80 employees that were staffed for this project, so pretty big team. And it was set to be a Melee-like platform fighter. So right off the bat right here, the author mentions that the game was in the vein of Super Smash Bros. Melee, set in the League of Legends universe. So I can imagine some kind of Melee, like mechanics-wise kind of game, but with the League of Legends characters as a platform fighting game. And this is the part that hurts the most here. It says that Riot saw the opportunity to support the game's esports scene, unlike Nintendo. As we know, Nintendo has a very complicated history, especially with Melee. And yeah, they're looking to kind of enter that esports space and kind of fill that void that Nintendo has left. It's kind of crazy that like Smash is the biggest platform fighter by far, and yet there's no support whatsoever when it comes to, I mean, we can get into a whole argument about that, or a whole discussion about Panda and all that kind of stuff, but as of right now, there's really no support from Nintendo. It says we always have a number of projects in various phases of R&D, that stands for research and development. And spinning projects up and down happens multiple times a year, and this is something that's kind of true with Riot that we've kind of seen throughout time, is that they do, I mean, they have the resources to kind of like, you know, test different things out and decide if they're going to scrap it later on or not. So that's one thing about Riot, whenever you have a big team like that, is you do have the money and you have the resources, the time to do your research, to develop these types of things, and if it doesn't work out or it's not exactly what the team wants, they can always scrap it later on, and it seems like that's what they decided to do here. A source familiar with staffing decisions at Riot said that approximately half of the team had received an offer to be reassigned within the studio, while others were in the process of seeking new positions through the company's internal job board. So I'm guessing they kind of knew that the plug was pulled, and they were kind of just, you know, relocating workers. So this top part right here doesn't have a whole lot of other information, so we're going to scroll down a little bit here. It talks more about the cancellation. It says Pool Party's cancellation was precipitated in part by a reassessment of consumer appetite for a Smash competitor. What does that mean? That basically means that they kind of saw, you know, what the consumer demand was for a Smash-like game that wasn't Smash. and they decided, you know what, maybe we shouldn't drop this game. According to sources familiar with the project's development, executives at Riot were spooked by what they had perceived as the failure of Multiversus, a free-to-play fighting game starring characters from Warner Brothers. Now, obviously right here it just says a source. There's not a whole lot of other information, but I did find some stuff on Reddit from the actual author of this article, so I'll show that in just a little bit. But according to the author, there are sources that basically said this, and he did confirm on Reddit that they were talking about the original launch of the beta and not the relaunch of Multiversus. So if you're looking at the timetables here and you see that this project was canceled back in May before Multiversus officially launched, it's because they're talking about the beta version of Multiversus. So again, the relaunch of the game, it seems like has nothing to do with their decision because this game was canceled back in May. It was the original launch of the beta, kind of seeing that timeline where the game failed. That's kind of what made this decision overall, it seems like. Originally envisioned as a hardcore fighting game, the pitch for Pool Party changed over the course of development, shifting to include party game elements and casual friendly mechanics. So basically, it kind of started off as an esports game, it seems like, as a hardcore melee type of game, which we don't see a whole lot with platform fighters. The platform fighters that have dropped, some of them have those melee mechanics, but a lot of them are kind of geared a little bit more towards casuals. It seems like it was really focused on the esports scene and being more of a hardcore fighting game. And kind of over time of development, they tried to shift it a little bit more to casual, and then in the end, it just didn't work out. And I'm guessing this also has something to do with it because right here it says the change in scope and vision frustrated some staff on the project, so I'm sure tensions were high. They see Multiversus is failing. I'm sure there's lots of contributing factors here. It wasn't just Multiversus. It also says that Pool Party has no relation to any other fighting game under developed by Riot Games, so it has nothing to do with 2KXO. Is it 2XKO? My bad. I'm never gonna get this name right. I'm just gonna call it Project L. It has nothing to do with Project L, which is still coming out next year. And it also talks about how the video game industry has just been having layoffs in general, which we kind of know a lot of games have been struggling. Development has been struggling. The whole industry has been struggling, it seems like, especially when it comes to esports. And then at the end here, kind of talks about the Big House and how that was canceled this week as well. Kind of just a little bit more doom and gloom for the fighting game space here, specifically platform fighters. And that's kind of about it right here. So yeah, as you can see, they did have plans to develop this game. They had a pretty big team of 70 to 80 people. I would say that's a pretty decently sized team there to create a melee-like game, focus on esports, focus on supporting the esports scene, and ultimately they kind of decided to scrap it. Seemed like it started off as a mostly competitive game, kind of shifting to be more inclusive of the casual scene. Frustrated some people. They saw Multiversus was failing. They thought, that there wasn't really a demand for a Smash competitor at the time, and they decided to scrap it. And so, like I said, like when these decisions are made, a lot of times it's not just one thing that will cause that decision. A lot of times it's a combination of things. I'm sure it's the combination of Multiversus failing. It's the combination of disputes within the team, and I'm sure there's other stuff as well. But like I said, I was kind of scrolling on Reddit, and I did find a Reddit thread here on the Multiversus thread page, whatever, Multiversus the game. And in the comments, somebody was saying something about the author, and then the actual author himself responded. And this right here is his page right here. So I was kind of looking, and he did reply to a lot of different things here. And that's where he did actually confirm that this was based off of the beta back in 2022, 2023, instead of like the relaunch of the game. So that's how it adds up time-wise. But yeah, overall, this is just not good news for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, number one, because this game is not coming out, and the announcement of this article coming out, a lot of people were very excited for this. I guess they're excited about it now because we didn't know about it before. So a lot of people are upset that we're not getting this game. And because of that, a lot of people are hating on Multiversus even more. For whatever reason, Multiversus is a game that people like to hate on, whether they play it or not. Like TikTok especially, get comments all the time that say the game is dead. Like, I'm going to respond to that. People just like to hate on it for various reasons. And this is just an additional, piece of ammo for people to use. I was already looking on Twitter at the quote retweets of the article, and everybody's blaming Multiversus. They're like, oh, the game was so bad. Like, it actually canceled another game. But like I said, a lot of things like contribute to the cancellation of a game like that. So it's not just Multiversus. That might have been a contributing factor, but there's other reasons why it got canceled, I'm sure. But overall, it's not a good look. And it's not a good look at all for platform fighters in general. I mean, we've been seeing this, over the last couple of years. We see it with Multiversus where it does good, it fails, it comes back, it's starting to fail a little bit again. You look at like Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, which was garbage at first, and then over time they made it a lot better to where they released a sequel, and the sequel just goes nowhere because people don't want to buy the game because they felt like they were crossed already. So we're just seeing it time and time again where like no platform fighter has been able to live up anything close to Smash, it seems like. The only thing kind of close would be like Brawlhalla, and I mean, I am hopeful for Rivals of Aether, but I know it's not a game that's going to go mainstream. I think like when it comes to like competitive platform players, platform fighter players, I think it's going to thrive, it's going to do really well. The people that are kind of in that space, but as far as like mainstream mainstream casual audience, I don't think Rivals is going to really enter that space at all. It kind of feels like Smash has a monopoly on it. Like, it just feels like every platform fighter is just kind of destined to fail. And I guess that's what kind of makes this so sad, is because like looking at a company like Riot, like you pretty much know that this game was gonna do well, and a lot of people are kind of saying that too, like that, for that to be the reason, you know, Multiverse is failing, like for that to be the reason why this game doesn't come out, it doesn't entirely make sense. And that kind of goes back to what I said, where I'm pretty sure it wasn't the only reason. I'm sure it was a contributing factor. The article kind of words it to where like it was just multiverses almost, but I do think that it was a contributing factor. It's not the only reason why they didn't come out with it. I mean, when the game is going one direction and then they decide to change the direction of the game, so there's disputes within the team, and then your research and development team says, hey, this game that like is in the same genre that we're releasing, like it just crashed, it's doing horrible, and they come back to the team that's already arguing, I'm sure it's just a whole big mess. And I think the craziest part about this is that, you know, it's obvious that the demand was there, because again, if you look back in 2022 when Multiversus first launched, that game, like, it peaked, and I mean it peaked, like it was like Fortnite numbers at first, and for like a solid month or two as well. Like, it's not like it was like that for a couple days. Like, no, it was like a month or two where it had a lot of players. And so it's kind of crazy to me that they think that it wouldn't do well. I mean, maybe it's not hitting the numbers that they would want it to, but I think the game would do well as long as the game was developed correctly. If anything, like, you know, like I said before, we're gonna see what happens with Multiverses. I obviously want it to do well. Like, I'm hoping that we bounce back and we fix a couple things, and it's looking good for the future. But even if Multiversus flops again and it's completely irrelevant in, you know, 2 months, I think that for sure, like, Multiversus as a whole, like, we can take it as a learning lesson. At least other companies can, you know what I mean? So if they were to release a game, you know, for example, like Riot, maybe if they revisited this in the future, which it sounds like they're not going to, but even if they did, maybe, you know, we could take this as a learning lesson as to, you know, what to do, what not to do, you know. I mean, that's the only good thing about bad situations, and I always say that, right? You know, if something fails, at least you can learn from it, and in the future, we can hopefully not make those mistakes again. But as always, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you would have been hyped for this game to come out, and if you're mad at Multiverses because you think it killed it. Again, I think it was a contributing factor. I don't think it's the only reason why this project got canceled, but, you know, I guess we'll just kind of never know unless somebody else gives us more information. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, help me get to 10,000. We are 900 subscribers away, and I will catch you all in the next one.